Today's episode of the vlog is going to be all about Halloween Horror Nights 2018 at Universal Studios Orlando. If you've seen these videos of mine in the past, you know this is an annual tradition for me. I've been going at least 5 years in a row, but I think it's been more than that. And as with last year, this year I did do the Fast Pass because I knew I was just going one night and that I wanted to see everything. And especially with Stranger Things being at the park this year, I knew it was going to be a bit of a line for at least that. So I got to the gate about half an hour before the park opened for Halloween Horror Nights and was kind of in that first wave of people getting in. As with the last couple years, I went with my friend Colin, and he is a massive Chucky fan, so the first thing we had to do when we got in the park was to head to the Chucky Scare Zone, which I think was officially titled Revenge of Chucky. And this entire scare zone is decked out to be like Play Pal Toys is having some kind of big nostalgic event concerning all their different properties, with the Good Guy doll being at the centerpiece of it all. And then I guess Chucky goes in and possesses all these other creatures a la Cult of Chucky. So while he's the only Good Guy doll walking around, there are other toys that are possessed killers, basically. So there's like a barrel of monkeys kind of creature, and some easy bake oven where somebody's been cooked inside of it. There's a doctor doing surgery on people, which I don't know how that has to do with a toy, but that's a thing. Walking in the streets are several different performers in different costumes. There's some guys in kind of Good Guy doll or Play Pal Toys raincoats, so they're like vinyl raincoats with the logo on the back covered in blood. Most of them were wielding like axes or something similar to that. And I guess those are the employees of the event, theoretically. And then there's like Garbage Pail Kid looking dolls walking around, Barbie doll kind of characters walking around, Army Men, a ventriloquist doll who apparently recognized me from YouTube and kind of revealed that in the strangest in-character way possible.
I heard you like toys.
And then the centerpiece of all this is the Good Guy dolls display. There's just a wall of Good Guy doll boxes, and in the middle there's a Chucky puppet that comes up every, I don't know, it felt like every 10 minutes or so, and basically does like insult comedy with the audience. So picking people out of the crowd and making fun of them. And I guess there's a further show that goes on with it. I don't know if I ever got any of it on video, but he actually like brings up the CEO of Play Pal Toys and electrocutes him with some slinky contraption that he has set up on stage. So there's actually like a show, and then there's the insult thing.
That's awesome.
Right by that is the first house, and this one is Halloween 4. And as with previous years, I think the last couple years they did Halloween, then Halloween 2. I guess we're not doing Halloween 3, but we're skipping on to 4. They walk you through the course of the movie, so you start off in the asylum, where Michael's in his burn coma, and then you're kind of in Haddonfield and into the police officer's house. Most of the scares are Michael popping out at you with his knife, but there are a couple scenes where they throw in like a little Jamie Lloyd actor. And it does end with the scene from the end of the movie where Jamie appears to be possessed. I thought the house was decent. It doesn't follow the pacing of the movie as well as I really would want it to. They've done some houses over the years, and I think particularly Halloween 2 They did like a really good job of having you feel like you're going through the progression of the film. Here I felt like we spent a long time in sections that don't really get a lot of screen time in the movie, and then sections that were a larger bulk of the film were kind of shorter. But overall, I think the concept was good. They did a good job executing the film in some way, shape, or form. It just, I don't know, I felt like there were pacing issues with it if you're trying to match it up with the movie. But if you just go to enjoy it as a Halloween haunted house, then it should be fine on its own. Next up, as we continued moving counterclockwise around the park, we ended up in a scare zone called Twisted Traditions. Now, Twisted Traditions last year was Trick or Treat, and I feel like this year it could have been Trick or Treat as well. It's very much a similar idea with a lot of like iconic Halloween stuff around, a lot of jack-o'-lanterns and creepy houses and things like that. They had very, very similar trick-or-treater characters to what they had with the Trick-or-Treat Scare Zone last year. The big different thing this year were these pumpkin actors that had like monstrous-looking pumpkin heads, or they were on stilts and were standing above the crowd. There were some things that made it look like they were making human sacrifices into jack-o'-lanterns, and I want to say I heard some rumor that they had to tone down aspects of what was in the scare zone, so maybe I wasn't getting the full effect. But overall it was enjoyable. It just wasn't that much different from what was there last year for me to not just want it to be trick-or-treat again.
Oh, no, dude, I'm serious. I will literally go, I'll leave you $50. Just give me one. That's the shit I want. I want the stuff that no one wears.
I was gonna ask when would you ever wear it, but I'm sure you'll figure that out.
What?
I was gonna ask whenever would you wear it, but I guess you'll figure that out.
When it rains?
So I guess we're going back through that one again later when there's actually scare actors in it.
Check back in a couple of years. The store I just was in may have them.
No.
Otherwise, eBay.
Speaking of Trick or Treat, the next house was Trick or Treat itself. And I know you might be saying, well, why are you complaining about the Trick or Treat scare zone when there's a Trick or Treat house? Well, Hollywood got both this year, so that's just, I guess, the root of my grumbling about it. But Trick or Treat House has to be my favorite of the night. It's the only one I did twice because, I mean, it was incredible. It brings you in to the outside facade of Mr. Krieg's house. You see a Sam like down the alleyway from you as you're going in. There's all the pumpkins in his yard. Walk in, you're basically looking straight up the stairs. You see Sam at the top of the stairs. Mr. Krieg will kind of jump out with a shotgun, shoot at Sam, and Sam actually disappears. They must be using like a Pepper's Ghost kind of effect up there so that whatever image of Sam you're seeing will vanish as soon as the gunshot goes off. Then you go down a hallway and you actually see like the Mr. Krieg actor with a Sam puppet attacking him, like basically holding on to his upper body and like biting at him and stuff. And it's pretty obvious that it's, you know, the actor with one hand in the puppet's head and the rest of the puppet just attached to him. And they have it go through like doorways. So you actually see him go through, I think it's like 2 or 3 different doorways where you see him, you don't see him, then you see him again as the actor kind of goes down the hall with you as you're walking. The first time, and probably the second time I walked through this house, I just had a ridiculous smile on my face the entire time I was in there. Trick or Treat is one of my favorite movies. Any opportunity I have to be like physically inside that universe just makes me ridiculously happy. So as I'm going down the hall with this actor, I'm looking at him like, oh man, this is so cool. And like, I think the actor noticed that and then like lunged the puppet at my head, which was kind of funny. I'm trying to go chronologically through this, and I'm sure I'm probably going to miss some details because it has been a week as of this recording. So if I'm saying stuff that's slightly inaccurate, please forgive me. But then you go into the bedroom scene where they have the jack-o'-lantern with the flame effect going out of it, and Mr. Krieg there again. You go out into the streets and you see the vomiting kid on the steps of Principal Wilkins' house. You go into the basement and you see the severed head and you see Sam peeking in a window. You go down the streets of the town and you see the woman being attacked by the vampire. Now, I never actually saw the vampire. I don't think that was actually a character they had, but the woman basically jumps out and you can see she's being attacked. You get to go through the forest with the werewolves. They actually repurposed the American Werewolf in London prop they had from a few years back as one of the werewolves. And they have like the Red Riding Hood werewolf. You get to see the school bus both in the past where there's the kids in it, and then you get to see it in the current day where it's like sunken into the bog. Basically every single thing that was in that movie gets represented in this house. I have a suspicion Sam is in every single room. I never caught him in some rooms, but I'm fairly confident Sam has a presence in, if not every room in that house, almost every room in that house. Absolutely incredible, incredible house. But to get a bit of a letdown after that, the next house up was Seeds of Extinction. I could see from the set dressing, Seeds of Extinction was basically like a post-apocalyptic, not quite zombie universe, but something in that vein, where it's like plant monsters have taken over, and the facade on the outside was like you going into this mall, and it's been just completely overrun with vines and plant monsters and stuff. I have to say in general, it wasn't the best house. There were some cool things where the actors were basically in like ghillie suit type things, and they blended in with the walls really well, and I think that was a great idea. What really ended up happening a lot was me bumping into actors unintentionally, and because I'm not particularly scared of these things, I'm more just like, oh, sorry, than I am, you know, like actually being terrified by the house. They did some cool things that they've done in previous houses where they have like angled flooring and things like that. But overall, I think they just didn't do a very good job theming everything out really well. You were constantly aware you were in this like plant world, but from the outside and showing that it was like a mall, or at least I think that's what it said. I'm pretty sure it said mall, and it looked kind of like it in parts, but you never really got a good sense that you were going through that. And I think if they would have done a little better job theming it to feel like you were actually inside of a normal place that had been overtaken instead of just like a jungle, it would have really had a good effect. The Motel Hell thing at Hollow Scream, where you're basically seeing the motel and it's very recognizable as a crappy motel, and then there's haunted things and scary things in there. I think this could have actually benefited from doing something similar, where it's a recognizable kind of location, but it's been overrun and made creepy, but you can still tell what it used to be before it became creepy. So then the next area is not really a scare zone, it's kind of a vague area they've had every year. It's the Simpsons section of the park. And there's usually chainsaw clowns. There were some chainsaw clowns there this time. Not many, unless it was just the wrong timing. I only went through there once as opposed to every other scare zone that I did a couple times. But I only saw just a few chainsaw clowns, so it was kind of an anticlimactic zone. But it's not even technically a scare zone anyway, so it doesn't even really matter that it was underpopulated because it's not like it was advertised to be something.
Oh, there we go. I was gonna say, there was like nobody on the street, and then there we go.
There's no chainsaws?
There are chainsaws. They're after you with the chainsaw. The saw is indeed family.
Got King Hunter in the middle of the fucking road there.
Off-brand killer clowns.
Then in that corner of the park, there were two more houses. One was Dead Exposure, Patient Zero. And this one had some definite theming around it. You were going into like this military compound. They were talking about vaccine, I guess for the zombie plague that's hitting this place. You see like a medical tent outside. Everything over the loudspeaker is in language. And at first I thought it was Spanish, but some of the things inside made me think maybe it was French, because they had some catacombs and things you normally associate with France. So I'm not entirely sure. But they're basically making an announcement that they're going to vaccinate you, and the vaccination causes blindness. So you're going through this house, and they are using flashes of light and UV lighting to illuminate everything. So it's very hard to see anything. There are periods where everything's completely black, and I actually lost the people ahead of me a couple times just because I couldn't see whether I need to go straight or turn or whatever. And then I just have to wait for the next flash of light to know I can move forward. It definitely screws with your vision. I don't know if it really made it that much scarier. It kind of made it annoying after a while. I was just really having trouble knowing where I was going, and it was, just kind of an obnoxious gimmick. As I mentioned, you're going through a bunch of zombies, you go into like some catacombs at one point, you get on some city streets at another point, you get to like a war zone area where people are coming out with guns and shooting at the zombies. So you get like different levels of strobing lights, some areas that are a little more lit, some that aren't, and yeah, I really didn't like that house. The only thing I could say that was kind of interesting about it is because of all the strobing lights and flashing lights, when you get out, when you blink, you're kind of like seeing the image still of what was inside the house flashing in front of your eyes. That was kind of cool, but overall, I just don't think the gimmick worked particularly well. The other house in this back corner, though, was another one I really, really enjoyed. It was called Slaughter Cinema. It is based off of non-existent B-movie type things. You're outside in the queue, and I almost wish I had gone through this without the Fast Pass because they're actually playing these trailers for the different fake movies out on the side of the wall when you're in the queue. There's all these kind of like 70s or 80s style schlocky looking movies, and you go into this theater basically, and you're walking through different like scenes of those movies. And it really feels like this was a brainstorming session at Universal for Halloween Horror Nights, where it's like somebody came up with an idea for a house, and it's like, it's only like one or two good scares, can't think of anything else, let's put it aside. Oh, here's another one we only have a couple good ideas for it. And they just took all these like little ideas and put them all together with this as the kind of overall encompassing thing. Basically making an anthology house. Which is funny because Trick or Treat's kind of an anthology house too, but very much in that vein. But this was wildly different scenes. You have a like sorority chick summoning some Cthulhu monster to kill people. You had a barber like cutting people's heads off. You had like possessed children instead of a Chuck E. Cheese style environment. A swampy Yeti, cannibal, Amazons, and I know I'm blanking on some of them. There were some really, really fun concepts in there, and it was really a fun house to go through. One thing I really wish Universal did with all their marketing and, selling things related to the houses, I wish they would have made up like a little pack of like mini posters for all the fake B movies in there and sold that. Because I would totally frame that up and stick it on my wall. After that, it's the back corner of the park where Men in Black is. We did that. After that was the house that I hate saying the name of the most. It was the return of the Blumhouse house. So I think last year they did 3 or 4 movies. This year they only did 2. They did the first Purge and Happy Death Day. So the first half of the house is Happy Death Day. You go under the bridge from the beginning of that movie. You see like the little thing that the killer's trying to lure the girl with. I think it was like a music box. Killer jumps out at you. You go through scenes where you're seeing the different kills from the film, and then you go right back to the dorm room from basically where she wakes up at the beginning of the film. So it keeps cycling through kills, and then going back to the dorm room, you go through the hospital, you go through the different parties, and it just keeps cycling back. The only thing I could say with that is there was a little bit of a pacing issue where I think they needed like one or two more instances of going back to that first stage, and I know that's got to be expensive to add in multiple times, but if you could keep going back to that first thing a little more, I think it would really sell the kind of Groundhog's Day effect that movie has. Colin hadn't seen the movie, and I think he was really confused the first time we were in a scene that was identical to a scene we'd already been in. I think it was actually a really decent translation of that movie's concept into a house. Just maybe could have used a little more work. Maybe if the sequel is decent and they don't try to cram other stuff into a house next year with it, if you could just do a dedicated house to that concept, it may actually be a lot better. The problem then becomes the first Purge. I did not enjoy that movie. I watched it just recently to prepare to see the house, and overall it was just kind of a letdown. It was generic Purgy type stuff. I don't even know what to say about it. They had some of the characters from the movie, some of the concepts from the movie, but it was all pretty weak. And unfortunately, after the really cool beginning with Happy Death Day, I think The Purge actually really brought the house down. Even if they'd switched those two movies and did The Purge first, then to Happy Death Day, it might have raised my opinion of the overall house just because you would end on the better note. So then there's the long back stretch of the park without a lot of stuff going on in it. I want to say in previous years they've had scare zones kind of out in front of where now they have Fast and Furious, and I assume because that ride was new and open, they weren't putting scare zones there on purpose. But between that and the Harry Potter section, it just really is a lot of nothing in the backside of the park. Universal needs to get the rights to do a 28 Days Later themed scare zone and set it in that Harry Potter area. That would be amazing. So then we took a little detour from our circle around the park and kind of went with the cut-through path around the lake into the Killer Klowns from Outer Space scare zone. And I'm a huge fan of that movie, I have been for years, and that was really fun to actually see brought to life. The costumes were great, they were kind of fittingly in scale with what you think the clowns would be. Very large heads, very baggy costumes, the giant ray guns and things walking around. They had like a bubble machine coming out of one corner. They had the cotton candy people all wrapped up hanging from hooks. They had the ice cream truck yelling things. They actually had the two brothers, the ice cream selling brothers, running around. They had some female clowns chasing them. Just some other kind of random alien looking stuff sitting around. It wasn't a very long scare zone, but it was really cool. It was very, very well done. And the setting they put it in, the kind of part of the backlot area they have, really kind of sold it as being like the streets taken over by killer clowns, which I definitely appreciate.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off? He apparently was. Yeah, bubble machine over there.
back into the main circle, to the next scare zone, which was Vamp 85, New Year's Eve, which is literally just a parody of the 80s with vampires. And I think if you don't know it's vampires, you might not guess that they're vampires. They kind of look like zombies a little bit. They're basically people in 80s costumes with, I think they had fangs and they had blood dripping off of them. So there was a stage where like a hair metal band had been killed with their own instruments. And there's just these random scare actors roaming around in these costumes. There's like a Michael Jackson vampire, a Prince vampire. I think there were a couple other celebrities that I can't remember offhand. And then there's some people just in kind of generic 80s garb. And then there is like a New Year's Eve stage where they have like an MC announcing the New Year's Eve celebrations. They have the ball drop. They have like dancers go up on that. And I think this is kind of half replacing what they used to have kind of in the middle of the park, where they used to have a stage where they'd have dance shows every so often throughout the night. And now they're doing that on the stage they used to have Bill and Ted on. Thought that stage was getting demolished, but apparently that hasn't happened. So instead of the dance show being in the middle of things for people to see without having to go to the stage, it's now kind of behind closed doors a little bit. So now this was kind of like a mini version of that in a different location. It was interesting. It was a cool enough concept. I don't know if it was the greatest scare zone ever, but it was kind of cool. And I assume it was just to tie in to some of the very 80s things that were in that back corner. The next house we went into was Poltergeist. And before I talk about the house itself, I need to talk about the people that were in the house behind me. There were a group of kids that just were not having any of the scares. And I think I probably have some permanent hearing loss from them screaming behind me the entire time. But it brings you in, you actually see the facade of the house up high above you because you're in the depths of the empty swimming pool. So you have the mud, you have corpses around you, and you go through this weird like underground tunnel system going under the house that was making me think more Poltergeist 2 than the original Poltergeist. But you do get into the house eventually. You see little Carol Ann up above you with the TV with her hands up on the static. You see the stacking chairs scene. You see the tree coming through the window. You get some giant puppets popping out of closets for the monster heads that would attack people. You get to see the guy ripping his own face off in the mirror. And a lot of these early things I was really, really enjoying. They were doing a really good job of capturing the scenes of the movie. Maybe not quite in chronological order, but at least giving you a good view of the different things. They had similar to what they did with The Shining previously, where it's almost evoking the mood of the movie and specific scenes, but not in the correct order. Which works for Poltergeist, because the beginning of Poltergeist takes a long time for anything really creepy to happen. They have some scenes where you're going through the closet, and they have kind of the like ectoplasm-y curtains around you and things. But then they go in this really long section where it's all about the clown puppet. You just see him multiple times, and it kind of brings you deeper and deeper into all this stuff. You see him on a shelf, you see him above you, you go through this thing where his arms are everywhere, you have a scare actor in the costume pop out. And I know for a lot of people that was one of the scariest things in Poltergeist, but to me it just went on a little too long, and I kind of just ended up feeling bored after sitting through it for too long. But overall, the house was pretty good. It's just that the clown thing went on too long. It's like they ran out of ideas and they just kind of doubled down on the clown. The next house was Scary Tales, and as the name implies, this was bringing you through classic fairy tales with a horrific twist. And to be quite honest, looking at the name and description of this, I thought I was not going to like this house. I thought it sounded kind of juvenile. I thought it was going to be kind of, I don't know, I've seen that thing done before in movies and other haunted houses and things, and I've never really thought it was the greatest thing ever. But they did a really good job. It was another kind of anthology house, which seems to be the thing that's really doing it for me this year. So they bring you through these different fairy tales with more gruesome designs to it. You walk in, there's like a witch on a bungee apparatus, basically flying over you. You're looking up at the castle with a cauldron on top, and there's like different pillars around you, and this witch is just jumping over top of you and flying around. It's really crazy. And then you get in, and I forget if it's one of the first ones or not, but there's a Hansel and Gretel one, where not only is there like gruesome, kids being eaten and whatever in it, but like they piped in like the smell of cinnamon, so you feel like you're actually in a gingerbread house. And then you go into another section that is, I guess there's like 3 little pigs, but like they're piping in like barbecue smells into it, which was kind of funny. They have like a kelp forest with a mermaid monster jumping out at you. I swear there was another smell they used, and I want to say it was a less pleasant smell, but I can't remember what it was. But there were some really cool things where they're just using the scent feature to really enhance the house. And then the design of the house itself, everything was very well done. It looked really cool and unique, and it just didn't feel as lame as I really thought it was going to. It felt fairly original or fairly inventive. So I think after that, we ended up stopping at the Universal Monster Cafe for food, which is more just because it's Universal Monsters than anything to do with anything else. But I will say I went a couple years ago and did that, and I was really disappointed. I think I even said in the video it was a mistake to stop there because the food was really garbage. This was better. They actually had like some kind of barbecue stuff and some other options and things. They had like turkey legs and things like that. So it was actually a lot better meal than it had been the last time I went. But after that, we headed to the dreaded Stranger Things line. And with the Fast Pass, it was still, I don't know, maybe half an hour wait. It was a little bit of a wait. It wasn't terrible though. But I have to say, I was underwhelmed with this house. This was the big draw this year. I've heard several people say that it was so incredible. And I'm definitely a fan of the show. But going through there, it just never felt right to me. They have a lot of the Demogorgon popping up, which I guess that is your big bad for the show, or for the first season at least. But the Demogorgon's not really super present on screen until pretty late in the show. So just having it pop up all the time felt a little weird. And this was kind of going through chronological order. You're in the Hawkins lab, you see people being slaughtered by the Demogorgon. You see people searching for Will. And the sets are well done enough. I mean, there's some neat things. You're going through his clubhouse and it's all decked out and things like that. The forest looked decent. Then you get into the Hawkins lab and have the sheriff pop out. And I really don't think the scare actor knew what he was doing. He basically is supposed to kind of come from behind a corner. And there's kind of an audio that plays where you hear 2 gunshots and then he says, "Go." And the actor walked out, kind of like lazily flailing his gun around, and then pointed when the go part played. And it almost seemed like he thought the gunshots were supposed to be him stomping his feet, because it didn't look like he was shooting a gun. It looked like he was just stepping on cue with those gunshot sounds. And that was actually really lame. And after that point, you get into some parts where you're in the Upside Down, but they don't really make it very clear when that happens. Like, I was actually kind of confused. Am I just in the lab and it looks creepy, or am I in that other dimension? So I think they could have done a little better job clarifying that. They did have the people in the like dive suit kind of things going through there, so there it was a lot clearer. And then you get all the way through this house, and I think there were like 1 or 2 other kids in it. And then you just see the static figure of 11 pressing the Demogorgon up against the wall. And then you go through a little further and there's another, I think it might have been an actual actor. I'm not entirely sure because I don't think I saw them move in an 11 costume. But, for being all over the advertising for this house, she's barely in the house. The next house was Carnival Graveyard, and all I can describe this as is Rob Zombie's wet dream. You're going into an abandoned amusement park, as the name implies. There's like carnival rides broken down, all kinds of things, and then you run into like some evil clowns and carnival barkers and things like that. The actors in the house I don't think did a whole lot for me, but the sets in there were really well done. They really just dressed all the sets to ridiculous levels. They even had parts where you'd like see part of a set off in the distance, and I just thought it was background, but then you end up being closer to it later and seeing it from a different angle, which was kind of cool. But other parts are weird, like you saw a clown who was clearly in like some kind of bungee gear, should be like jumping over top, but they weren't doing anything. They were just standing and waving at people. And there's a scene where they were like hanging somebody, but it was kind of just poorly timed, for at least when I went through it. So yeah, I think nice set, but it didn't come together overall. And then at the end of that, we kind of did our traditional run to the different shops and things. And then I went off to just check out the last scare zone, The Harvest, which wasn't really much of a scare zone. There were some actors and kind of like black hoods roaming around. But really it was just these little like shrines to the different branded houses they had. So, you know, there's little basically hay bale with things representing Poltergeist on one, Halloween 4 on another, Trick or Treat, all that stuff. So really not much to speak of at all with those.
Sorry.
So that is it for my Halloween Horror Nights experience. As I said, at the end of the night, went back to Trick or Treat. We also kind of went through most of the scare zones a second time. As long as you don't count the Chainsaw Clown area, that isn't really a scare zone. And I have to say, this year overall was pretty good. There were a few things that were definite misses, but every year there's a couple things that just don't work for me. But the high points for me were really high. If I have to rank the houses, I'm going to say Trick or Treat is definitely number 1. I think Slaughter Cinema would be my number 2. Those are both incredibly good. I put Scary Tales at number 3. I think I put Poltergeist at number 4 and Halloween 4 at number 5. And that's pretty good. The 5 houses there are all ones that I would still highly recommend. And despite some flaws with them, I enjoyed immensely. So don't think number 5 is a shameful position on this list. And after that, it gets a little harder to rank. I guess I would put Stranger Things as number 6. It wasn't horrible, it just didn't live up to the hype or expectations I had for it. I'd say Siege of Extinction for number 7 as just an overall fine house that just wasn't really good or bad to me. I think I'll put Blumhouse at number 8, being a half good house and half meh. And I would closely follow that up with Carnival Graveyard, because that also is kind of like maybe a 50% good, 50% meh. Not bad, but just uninteresting, unimpressive. And I probably should rank Blumhouse below Carnival Graveyard, because when I was trying to rank these on the drive home, I couldn't even remember Blumhouse was a thing. but in retrospect, I think it's maybe mildly better than Carnival Graveyard. And then the very last place is Dead Exposure. That house just didn't work for me and honestly kind of gave me a headache. Normally I don't rank the scare zones, but I feel like I should this year. Killer Klowns, definitely my favorite of the night, followed shortly after by Revenge of Chucky. Probably put Twisted Traditions after that as number 3, just because it was very trick-or-treat-esque. Number 4 would be Vamp 85, and last place is The Harvest because there wasn't really much of a scare zone. But overall, really, really fun. Very happy. I honestly kind of feel like my Halloween season has peaked with that event, and I've been trying to find other things to go do this last week, but I've been way too busy to even think about doing more, so I really just have to wait till Spooky Empire, a week from the day I'm recording this and the week from the day I'm releasing this, to kind of get my last big thrill in for the Halloween season. Highly recommend going this year if you haven't already. There's still a couple more weeks to go as of this video's release date, and if you're in the Orlando area or can make it down there, I think it's worth the trip. If you are going one day, I do highly recommend the Fast Pass because I know I could not have gotten through all those houses without it. Either plan on doing multiple days or just plan on coughing up the money for the Fast Pass. But yeah, I'll be back next week with a more normal vlog covering probably the last 2 weeks, which haven't been super eventful, of Halloween pickups and different things, but I do have enough that it's worth talking about. And then after that, we've got Spooky Empire. So I will see you guys then.